Hey guys, welcome back to Mo's Game Table. Today we're going to take a look at Reluctant Enemies, Operation Exporter, the Commonwealth invasion of Lebanon and Syria in 1941. This is an operational combat series game from MMP. This is the starter set. This is where you want to go if you have been curious about OCS and are not sure if it's for you. You can pick this up relatively inexpensive and give it a shot, and it has a lot of material in it that is aimed specifically at the people like you and I that have never played OCS. I've been curious about it. I know it's very popular. I'm not sure if it's going to be for me, but the best way to do it is to get the starter set and see if all the extra information will make it easier to grok and more interesting to me than I already think it may or may not be. So the whole thing with OCS is you're dealing with a lot of supply issues. You always feel like you're going to be in trouble with supply, which I kind of go back and forth on. Sometimes it appeals to me, sometimes it doesn't. I generally just want to get in and fight in a game. I don't want to worry about, I'll leave that to the logistics people is my opinion. But when you're doing it operational scale and you want to have that overall command feel, this is where a game like OCS really can shine. And that's why I figured, you know what, why not? Let's just give it a look. And it says here on the back of the box, attention, gamers who always wanted to learn the Operational Combat series. Reluctant Enemies is an accessible introduction to the Operational Combat series. It has one map and about 60 combat units total, allowing for a scale of play not possible with previous OCS games. Regardless of size, however, it remains a full OCS game with all of the system's features. Reluctant Enemies provides wide open, swirling desert battles as well as river lines to cross and very rough mountainous terrain to traverse. The British can conduct an amphibious invasion, both players can conduct naval bombardments, and there is a small but significant air campaign. As always in the OCS, supply constraints make each player feel he may be on the edge of a disaster. So I'm not going to go into all of the detail here because it goes into Operation Exporter, gives a lot more background on it, but I wanted to hit on what it was that this game offered to newcomers to the system. And then down here at the bottom, it gives all of the components in the game. It says Reluctant Enemies components, everything needed to learn the system and play the game. Game-specific rules include complete historical commentary of the campaign, 2 sets of player notes, detailed order of battle, and designer's notes. Full color map, 22 by 34 inch, depicting the main battle area of the campaign from Beirut and Haifa in the west to Damascus and Amman in the east. 2 full color setup cards for all forces portrayed, 1 Vichy French, 1 Commonwealth, 280 counters depicting all military units in the campaign and all markers necessary to play the game. Steve Jansen's 4-page OCS rules summary and explanation. A must first read for those new to OCS. The OCS Starter Guide. This is a 16-page step-by-step replay of a first turn of Reluctant Enemies with color-illustrated examples of play. Chip Saltzman writes from the perspective of an OCS newcomer and details the various mechanics from the novice player's perspective. He includes numerous newbie notes explaining the various systems involved in OCS. It's the next best thing to having a veteran player teaching you the system over your shoulder. Operational Combat Series Rulebook and 4-page charts and tables version 4.1. So I'm sure that those have updated since this printing because this is from 2013, but that is everything you get in the game and it does not explain any time or anything like that. So let's take a look inside the box and see all of these goodies that you get. We got our 2d6, if I can dig that other one out. We've got our rule books, which we'll come back to, series rules, and the intro, as well as our counter sheet. One single counter sheet makes it easy. We've got our map and our setup cards. So let's put all this on the side. We'll set up the map and then we'll discuss from there all of the pieces that you get with the game. Okay, so we have our map laid out. I've laid it out landscape because you're not going to be able to see the entire map if I go portrait side. So I just wanted to start off with it this way and then I can flip it around so we can take a look at the rest of the map. But this gives you a look at the type of terrain you're going to get, the type of colors on the map. Pretty much looks like what we're used to from MMP and the gamers from the SCS games. It uses the exact same type of graphics. And we've got our, at the top, we've got our holding box, we've got our naval barrage box, and then down here we've got the holding boxes for Haifa and off-map holding box for airbase, Commonwealth supply types, and replacements down here. Over here to the right, we've got the turn record track and the rebuild table. And over here, we've got the tech and combat. I'm going to assume this is a CRT. So that is the map. We'll take a look here at the setup cards. We've got the Commonwealth card, and this explains to you the Commonwealth setup, where everything goes, the Commonwealth reinforcements when they come in. And here is the Vichy French setup. Same thing, all the different counters on setup, and then the ones for reinforcements on different turns. And we've got our sequence of play. This is the charts and tables for version 4.1a. Sequence play, transportation, equivalence, air base capture table, air combat table, air transport, airdrop, air transport here. You've got barrage, flak, combat tables, combat supply, combat sequence summary, and on the back we have the rail transport, attrition, shipping, capture table, supply, summary, supply level effects, fuel supply, tracing it, and miscellaneous and anti-tank effects here as well. That is one of them. You get two of those in the game. And then we've got our counter sheet, which we looked at before. It pretty much looks just like the counters you get from SCS. These are identical counters as far as quality and graphics. Obviously, they're going to have different information on it from OCS as opposed to SCS, but that's what you're going to get. Double-sided. You've got admin counters and your different units. Not a lot of units out there, as it says at the beginning. It's up to 60 units total, so very low counter density, which should make learning this system easier for a first-time player. Now we've got our rule summary and explanation. This is that 4-page explanation. This is like the first thing you want to read. This will give you an idea as to how each turn works, the basic concepts, mechanics of the turn, the sequence of play, and then the end phase, and then notes on playing. So that's a neat little thing to have. And then we've got our OCS starter guide here. This is 16 page, I believe it was. Yeah, it's 16 pages. And then Chip Saltzman writes this, and this is the one that they say where it feels like you have a vet OCS player standing over your shoulder, and it goes through a complete first turn of reluctant enemies with illustrated examples of play. And it's written in a pretty, looks like conversational format where you can follow along with it, and there's plenty of illustrated examples there. I like that quite a bit. I'm a huge fan of that, as we all know. I say it in every unboxing, but that is great. I like this newbie note. You may get clobbered in a particular action. It's okay. You can probably recover. If you totally blow it, write down your lesson, rest, and try again. So it does tell you that, you know, you're going to get beat up and punished, and that's fine. Just to press on or write down some notes and learn from it. So this is that does interest me, that it's got that sort of study element to it, as opposed to just kind of playing a war game where you're just out there beating a snot out of each other. This you can actually kind of learn from and study, which is what this level is intended for. So now you've got a 48-page rule book. This is the series rules. This is version 4.1a. Like I said, I'm sure there's probably a later updated version, but gives you the breakdown of your combat units here, and we'll take a look at that real quick. You've got three different things here. You've got combat strength, which is the big number on the left. Then in between you have a smaller number, action rating, and then movement allowance is the one on the right. You've got unit size, the unit symbol, division affiliation, the combat strength we already covered, and then the RE size over here. And then transport units is the point value and movement allowance. And then the different types of units are all explained out to you, and their unit sizes, headquarters units, aircraft, formation markers, and ships, and how those work. And then, of course, your OCS standard markers, which, as we've already discussed, are pretty similar to what you're used to in SCS if you've ever played those, with some new additions, obviously, because it is a different system. Then it goes into the outline sequence of play on page 3, breaks down your turns, units and markers, ground units, combat units, non-combat units, ships, aircraft, so on and so forth. General concepts, how to round your fractions, cumulative effects, ZOCs, attack units, regimental equivalence, stacking, illustrated example of play, fog of war, modes, mode changes, You have to change your mode if you're going to be moving, if you're going to be in reserve, or if you're in combat, which I think is pretty neat because, you know, if you've got units out there, in most war games, your units are always combat ready. There's never any admin time, there's never any downtime, things like that. That's rolled into a game, and that's what this level of game is all about. It's, you know, maintaining your units in readiness, and also at the same time when you have to take them down for rest, refit, supply. So I kind of like that idea. And then you have a strat mode, exploration mode, or exploitation mode, I should say. Disorganized mode, and then how to move ground units, terrain effects. Obviously, you can see this is much more involved than your standard game that, you know, where movement is pretty straightforward. This is more involved, as are all the other phases. Then you have ground combat, restrictions on combat, terrain and unit strength, training combat table, supply and combat, action rating modifier, odds determination, retreat step loss, retreats in advance. We've got a nice big long explanation, illustrated example of an overrun incident, and then we have barrage, air barrages, naval barrage, supply, the big one. Then you have maximum stretch of HQs, and supply is going to go for a couple pages. So actually, that goes for about 5 or 6 pages. Then you have internal stocks for supply, destroying dumps, specialized units for headquarters, transport points, railroads, artillery units, reinforcements, replacements, unit consolidation, air power and how that works, aircraft movement, air combat, flak, fighter sweeps, and then barrages, air transport, airdrops, and then air bases and base transfer, how to build them. And then you have your hedgehogs, your weather and naval power, how that can be projected, landing craft, beach assaults, ports and shipping, breakdowns. Optional rules start on page 38, and it gives you optional rules for things like recon, proportional strength, independence, long-range air effects, rebasing limitations, convention tempo, revised rebuilds, attacking empties, reactive artillery, enhanced construction, so on and so forth. And then you have your terms and definitions here on page 40. That goes for a couple pages. Then you have your designer's notes and player's notes to get you going. Then you have your index, which starts on page 44. This type of system obviously needs an index, and then explanation as far as what has changed from version 4.0. And on the back, you've got, I guess, things you can use for active and inactive air units. I didn't see that anywhere else on here, so they have that on the back of the book. Then you have a 24-page series game, or I should say not series rule, but game-specific rule book for Reluctant Enemies, and that goes into the units that are specifically in this game, how to handle the different locations on the map, the different units, naval barrage, commando units, French and Commonwealth units, and then the scenarios get to start on page 6. And we've got here historical commentary on page 7. And that goes all the way through till page 17 is where you start off with some player notes for the Commonwealth, and then the Vichy French, and design and development notes, and then learning OCS, a little note about that in the back, development notes, and abbreviations, acknowledgements, so on and so forth at the end. But that is a look at everything that comes in the box for Reluctant Enemies from MMP. If you are curious about OCS, this is the place to go to get a start. As you saw, you've got not only the series rulebook, which you get in all the games, and the game-specific rulebook, but you get a 16-page OCS starter guide, which we looked at, and a 4-page primer that'll get you kind of going, and then low counter density, not a lot of counters to move around and to deal with, so that makes grokking the system a little simpler because you're not having to worry about so many fronts and so many different units and things like that. But at the same time, nice size map, good challenge. So if you've been interested in the OCS system, Reluctant Enemies from MMP is where you want to go to get your start. If you have any comments or questions, post them down below. Thanks for tuning in, guys. See you next time.